light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. One of the quirks, I guess, or curiosities of doing a television show is the awareness, I suppose, that the viewing audience sees only that part that we let them see. There is always a lot more behind the scenes, a lot of struggle, frustration, equipment that won't cooperate. All of that is somehow hidden. And there is a certain opportunity within that to be a bit dishonest about what this work entails. And I've had people suggest that, well, you're on television, that means you must be wealthy. And I said, no, actually, nowhere near the case. And thus far, in any case, there's no income derived from these television shows at all. It's simply my contribution to the world being a better place, to share whatever question or insight or creativity I might have to offer that might somehow inspire someone or encourage someone else's personal and spiritual growth. And certainly there's a lot of growth and learning that happens in me as well by doing these shows. The fascinating people whom I meet, it's all the parts we don't see. And in society, there seems to almost be a certain pressure when we go out in public that all the stuff that happens at home is supposed to be kept at home, and people really don't want to know about that, so we won't talk about it, and we go out on the street and pretend to be nice, and how are you? Oh, I'm fine, and so much of it is just an absolute lie. And how are we going to build a good, honest, collaborative, effective relationship with anybody if we won't even tell them when we're in need, or what we're celebrating, all sorts of things? If we have to be honest and real with each other if we're ever going to be collaborators with each other, because together we can create a much more empowered and beautiful experience of life than we ever could all on our own, because we're also interdependent. And when someone's in trouble or difficulty, we need, the rest of the people around them need to know, or else they can't possibly help them. And we help them because at some point it may be us. One of the early witticisms I coined as Sister Who was that life is a collaborative effort. We all take turns being the one in need. And yet how often I found since phrasing that none of us, including myself, like to take our turns being the one in need. We would all rather be the generous one, helping somebody else. But suddenly when we have to ask for help, we forget that there are all these people out there who care about us, who would love the opportunity to be able to give something back. But the longer we insist that everything's fine, the more we don't give them an opportunity to give us anything. And the more we insist upon a one-way relationship where I can give to you, but you are never to give anything to me. Love is a two-way relationship. It means being able to give. It also means being able to receive. And in every moment of life, there's so many things that are so interdependent. And yet, in all of that interdependence, it's difficult to say what the outcome really will be. I'm grateful to Scott Peck in his book, In Search of Stones, for giving me the word overdetermined. The idea being that there are some things that are caused by so many converging influences and voices and contributions that you can't say for certain who is most to be credited for the accomplishment, or whose fault this is, when in fact there are 30 to 50 to 100 different contributors, all of whom are partially to blame, but none of whom is exclusively to blame. And so, the old adage says it takes two to tangle. The idea being that in every argument, all the participants contribute something, but most of them don't spend a lot of time thinking about what did I contribute to this. And there will be some situations in which the only thing I contributed was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But even that is some sort of a contribution. But there are so many more times when, as I sit quietly and think about it and let the emotions subside and just say, okay, what exactly happened? And I begin to discover that, yeah, I did contribute something. And I was just acting the way I always act. And to me, it was force of habit. I always do that. So it didn't occur to me that in allowing that habit to stand, I was making a specific contribution. That, for example, in having difficulty with chaotic situations, to place myself in a situation that's going to be chaotic means I'm going to make a negative contribution because I don't deal well with chaos. I immediately want to organize it, and if I can't organize it, I get frustrated. And so there are situations in which I need to respectfully bow out and hand off the situation to one of my friends who is specifically good at dealing with chaos. And I have a number of friends who can deal very well with chaos, but on the flip side, when they need to organize, they call me, because some of them, I swear, could not organize to save their lives. They live in chaos. But there are times when that freedom works for them, and there are times when that lack of organization becomes a real problem for them. And thankfully, in those times, they can call on me to come help put just enough organization to it that they can accomplish what they need to accomplish and get on with their lives. And without inviting me in to organize their whole life and maintain it that way. No, that wouldn't really make them happy because they prefer a casual environment. But the point being, we each have something we contribute, and sometimes what we contribute is the opportunity for another to help us. Sometimes people want to feel needed, want to feel like they belong, like they have a reason for being there, and if we don't give them a job to do, they get restless and don't know why they're there, and frequently will find some sort of trouble to get into. In any case, in carrying all of those thoughts, that awareness to my relationship with God, that mysterious spiritual being who I consider to be the embodiment of highest wisdom and greatest love, but mostly divine mystery. Not necessarily male or female, but some sort of person. And somehow, when I least expect it, prayer seems to make a difference. But, as I told other students within theological school, the principal challenge of being a person of faith, of any faith, of having any belief in God, is that you're trying to relate to that which you will never fully comprehend, cannot control, and is basically undescribable, and yet seems to have some sort of persistent presence that makes it difficult to... Well, I heard one person tell me it takes more faith to believe that God is not than to believe that God is. But I find most peace in allowing God to be divine mystery. Someone who is so beyond humanity that we do well to reach, to receive love from the divine and to reach out in love toward the divine, but to allow God to tell us individually how that should look and what we individually should be doing. There's a lot of people, a lot of different ministers, teachers, who have ideas about what they think God wants, and yet none of them, it seems to me, have a perfect answer that it works well for everyone, because there's just so much diversity in humanity. And I just suppose, in all honesty, everybody needs something different. And thankfully, in my opinion, God is big enough to accommodate everyone's differences. What will God tell you? I don't know, but I think it's more important. It's more important that you participate in the conversation than that what God tells you or makes clear to you in whatever way is exactly what God tells or makes clear to somebody else, even somebody standing right next to you. God may have a different message for you and your neighbor and everyone else in your family. You may all have different messages. And it's okay. The point is not what form it takes, but the fact that a relationship happens. And that somehow with all this mystery and with all the different possibilities, I mean, that's why in the introduction to the show, when I wanted to figure out how to illustrate the question word why, I set up a row of dominoes, because everything affects something else. And by the time you get all the way to the center of that spiral in the introduction to my television show, it's been, 40, 50, 60, I'm not sure how many dominoes, each affecting the next one, so that the domino at the beginning has an effect upon the domino at the end, even though the two of them will never ever meet and will never touch each other. Through this interconnected spiral, they all have a relationship, and in a sense, I suppose you could say they're family to each other. The question, I guess, is when that effect comes, what do we each do with that? How am I going to respond? I may not be able to control what you did to me, but I can have some say in how I respond to it. When we come back to asking, why did this happen? That's where, like in the introduction of the show, I say, why? There's dozens upon dozens upon dozens of different reasons why. And somehow, in spite of all the not knowing exactly why, or which one is most at fault, when none of them are any more at fault than anybody else, it still leaves us with, so how do I respond to that? And how do I deal with a relationship in which there are a persistence of difficult questions? Some people would opt out completely and say, I don't want to deal with religion anymore. And unfortunately, they lump God in with the church. And God and the church are completely separate. God and any religion are separate. God is God. Religions are society's attempts to manage and standardize and systematize management of the spiritual part of each person. And so what religion essentially offers is the average answer, or the answer somebody thought was good. Well, in a certain place and time it probably was, but the idea of having a one-size-fits-all answer is a human construction that ultimately really doesn't work. It may work for a lot of people. It will never work for everyone, because there will always be somebody who has unique needs, unique characteristics, a unique personality, something that makes the average solution not workable for them. And it may be for dozens upon dozens of different reasons. They may be a domino in that series at just a particular point, and what works for the domino over here may not work for them, for a variety of reasons. In trying to bring some understanding to this through my songwriting, I came up with this kind of dialogue with God, I suppose you could say. At least my dialogue with God, I suppose. Which, on a side note, was my one objection to the popular books, Conversations with God. I kept saying it should be my conversations with God, because the conversations of that author with God are probably going to be completely unique and are not anybody else's conversations with God. We each have our own conversations in whatever way, sometimes with words and sometimes without words. But a sense at some point in our lives, I hope, of touching something greater than ourselves and finding a loving and wise relationship to that. And sometimes the dailiness of life can be so distracting. but it's the tip of the iceberg. We get to see the part that's above the surface of the water. And anyone who has studied icebergs knows that the size of the iceberg below the surface of the water is far larger than the part of the iceberg that's above the surface of the water. And so we have to live with respect for what we can't see, but not only respect for it, but a sort of curiosity, a sort of mutually empowering relationship, that you know when to steer around the iceberg, and when the sheer mass of the iceberg may actually give you protection from the waves of a storm, for example, or something like that. In any case, every metaphor has a point at which it breaks down, but suffice to say, perhaps the larger part of life is that which we cannot see, and trying to take all of that, and even being a little bit aware of it, and carry that somehow into the part of life that we can see, and to try to make some sense out of the two. On that note, my dialogue with God within this particular song that I'd like to share with you comes down to basically saying why, and God saying 100 different reasons. A long day's ending and my mind's in a whirl. So many things went wrong, or so it seems from where I stand and wish that I belonged. Unique and special, one of a kind, the labels that I hear from others trying to be nice, but of me unsure, unclear. Why am I such an anomaly, too different to fit in? All of this struggle wears me out, I don't know where to begin. Tell me, God, please tell me truth, because you must have had a plan. The combination I find inside what you placed within this man. 100 different reasons and 1,000 different whys. Life unfolds in mystery, one day at a time. Just hold my hand and do your best, and give me your best tries, for I can work a miracle with every step you climb. To be original, a good thing they say, but reward few and far between. Listen to your inner muse and give us what we've already seen. Yet even when I at last give in and follow such confused advice, things go wrong, or at the very least resist going very nice. Why does it all have to be so hard? What is this struggle for? Others doing much the same seem to find each open door, while I keep running into walls and bruising black and blue, and wishing I could hear you say just what I am to do. 100 different reasons and 1,000 different whys. Life unfolds in mystery, one day at a time. Just hold my hand and do your best, and give me your best tries, for I can work a miracle with every step you climb. To be myself or someone else is a choice I have to make. Yet both are hard and costs are high in every step I take. If I am myself, they might not approve of what they see and hear. Yet if I try to be someone else, the result is pain and tears. Finding some joy or a bit of love is much harder than it seems. Yet finding you, God, is often within the discovery of my dreams, and reaching past all the rules I'm told, taking hold of a better me. Finding you there, patiently waiting for all that I can be. 100 different reasons and 1,000 different whys. Life unfolds in mystery, one day at a time. Just hold my hand and do your best, and give me your best tries. For I can work a miracle with every step you climb. Yes, I will work a miracle with every step you climb. I continue to believe that each person is a care package from God, a package of unknown combinations and things to be discovered. And that being the case, it seems to me that when we find our dreams, when we listen to our hearts and do what it is we most love to do, that we find that what we most love to do is what God always meant for us to do, but to do it in the most beautiful and loving and wise way possible. Because it's not just knowing what to do, but learning how it can be best done. That I was singing a song, for example. Someone can get up and sing the notes perfectly and enunciate the words perfectly. And people in the audience will say, well, that was very perfectly done. And that's it. And on the other hand, you can get someone who walks out on stage in the totally most inappropriate clothing, has a hairdo that is totally unimpressive, doesn't know the first thing about stage presence, but they know the song. And when they start to sing, it's not a perfect performance, but it's a performance that grabs our hearts and that makes us remember what is beautiful and meaningful, and to remember not only how to do a song correctly, but to remember why we do songs in the first place. To remember that every song may not be a top 40s hit, and that's not the point. The point of a song is that it be sung and that it communicates something. That when we get to the end of the song, we understand something, or we feel something that we didn't feel and we didn't understand at the beginning of the song. That singing is the next step beyond oratory, beyond perfect speech, that someone can get up and give a real rousing speech, fourscore and etc., whatever political speech or grand oratory. And maybe the words are impressive, and maybe they're delivered in a theatrical manner. If the person doesn't understand about what they're speaking, it's a nice performance, and it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't change us. When the singer understands the song and communicates the song, and when the speaker understands the words and communicates the words, and when we're being honest with each other about how vulnerable and sensitive and loving and wise and hurt and inspired our hearts are at different points in life. That inner energy of life is what we can give to each other. An energy of life that connects us and also takes us beyond ourselves and reconnects us with divine mystery, with what some people call God, with an embodiment of love and wisdom that defies explanation and yet somehow keeps us going just when it makes the least sense to do so. And when we say why, and there is no clear why, when it's 100 different reasons and 1,000 different whys, and it doesn't really matter so much why. It matters, I mean, it's worth thinking about. Sometimes it can be inspirational to know why, and it can, more importantly, it can be a point of growth to know why. But in some circumstances, what is most important is that we show up and do whatever we can. That we first show up, that we make ourselves available, and that we listen to who is there, and we feel with them, and we be with them. Not in a judgmental, snobbish sort of way, but in a way that says, well, in the words of Barbara Sher, maybe we all think we're special, and maybe we all are. In any case, thank you very much for being with me today.